Welcome to the Foster Friendly Podcast, where we come together to make a difference in the lives of children in foster care and the families who care for them. Foster Friendly communities are part of a nationwide movement by America's Kids Belong that helps people from all walks of life take action and help kids and families thrive. You'll hear from former foster youth, foster and adoptive parents, social workers, faith and business leaders, and other experts on how to engage in meaningful ways. Our hosts Brian, Travis, and Courtney explore inspiring stories of everyday people making a difference in foster care where they live and work.
Hello and welcome to the Foster Friendly Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Mavis, and I've got my two wonderful co-hosts with me today, Courtney and Travis. And I'd like to take a moment, since we're still towards the beginning of this year, and we have new listeners coming all the time, of doing a little brief reintroduction. So, Courtney, why don't you start us off and tell us a little bit about who you are?
I'm Courtney Williams. I've been a foster mom licensed for going on 18 years now. Had over 80 kids in and out of our home and 9 children, which is absolutely nuts when I say it out loud. Of those 9, 4 out of the house. I feel like I'm beginning to become an empty nester, even though I still have 5 kids in the home. It feels weird.
You'll be a grandma with elementary kids.
That's right. Yes.
At the same time.
I've been with AKB for going on 5 years now, and I've had many different roles. So that this role of being on the podcast has been a super fun one.
Yeah, well, great. Thank you, Courtney. And Travis, share with the audience a little bit who Travis is.
Well, I've less kids, but more gray. I'm Travis, and I have been with AKB since, I believe, 2017.
Long time, yeah.
Long time. And we are adoptive parents. We have 5 kids, my wife and I. And we were foster parents at a group home in South Carolina for, I want to say, like 4 years. And so we had a lot of adventures and learned a lot there in that setting. So I reference that a lot in these conversations in that context. Yeah, working at AKB in the storytelling role and doing the podcast and still doing a little grant work here and there.
Great. Thank you. And then I'm Brian Mavis. Co-founded America's Kids Belong with my wife, and before that was Adopt Colorado Kids, and you'll hear a little bit about that on this episode. But fostered for 5 years when we then transitioned to starting Adopt Colorado Kids, and then continued to do kind of a non-traditional foster care with the aged out youth for a few years. And then a grandparent to a bunch of kids, a few who have been adopted from foster care. So that's just a bit about me. And today, the 3 of us, we normally will have 2 of us on this call, and we'll have a third person who is a guest. Today, it's going to be 3 of us, and we're kind of our own guests, but it's a unique episode because we are, in a sense, bringing in multiple guests who are part of our staff who run one of our key programs. And so, Courtney, why don't you do a little bit better job than I just did of helping our audience understand what they're about to experience, since it's a unique episode?
Yeah. So what people might not realize is America's Kids Belong is nationwide organization, not nationwide, but across the nation. Mm-hmm. And so we don't all work together. We work together, but we don't live close to each other. And so we have staff meetings once a quarter. And in one of our recent quarterly meetings, people were sharing stories of success of their IBP, I Belong project. And as we were listening, it was like, oh my goodness, our listeners need to know these stories. They need to hear these boots on the ground stories of our amazing staff members across different states who are doing great things and supporting kids. And so we took those stories and had them record the stories for you guys to see and listen to from their states, what's happening and how IBP is making an impact. And then we're going to respond to those things as the host to give you a little more context and idea behind what America's Kids Belong's I Belong project is. So before we even dive into those things, Brian, why don't you just tell us, how did IBP come to be? Tell out the story.
Yeah. So back when my wife and I started Adopt Colorado Kids about 15 years ago, 16 years ago, what we did at first was take photographs of kids. We actually were at that time, were running what was called the Colorado Heart Gallery. It's the second heart gallery in the country. And then throughout the years, more heart galleries were popping up around the country. Ours then at that time had become the largest. And there were a few times when we were at these photo shoots, photoing kids, giving them a compelling image that they would share stuff with us. And there was one specific time that was a real game changer. We were up here in northern Colorado in Loveland doing a photo shoot, and a sibling group of 3, oldest brother and 2 little sisters were coming, and the brother was separated from the sisters. They were in 2 different foster homes and looking for their place to be adopted, but they were separated currently. So they show up, the brother first, and then the girls show up, and they run towards each other, and they hadn't seen each other in months. And so they're, happy to see each other, emotional. We do the photo shoot, and then afterwards the boy comes up, and he's like 10. Comes up to my wife and asks her, how long will it take for you to find a family so we can all be together? And so she came home and told me about this interaction, and she said, a phrase that kind of changed everything. She goes, I love it that people can see these kids and then read their stories, but I wish they could hear what they say. I wish they could hear what I hear. And so that's when we started thinking, let's see if we get kids videoed. And we went to the state, got permission to do so. We didn't have any connections or talent in that area, but God provided, and quickly we got some special funding and some special professional video help, and I started rock and rolling, and it made a huge difference. And when it came to the effectiveness, especially of the older kids, where people could say, gosh, it's not just there's a good photo, I actually get to see their personality and hear their hopes and hurts and a little bit of their history. And so it just made a big difference. And not only did it help draw people in, turn their heads and hearts towards these kids, I said again, especially the older ones and the sibling groups, and seeing them interact with each other, and we'll see a little bit. But it also surprisingly and thankfully weeded people out. Because sometimes with a photo, you're like, oh, that kid is cute. And they're like, but then you're having them on video. We're always working for dignity, but also authenticity of like, hey, if this kid is nonverbal, or there's something that is some characteristic of, hyperactiveness or whatever, we want people to know that. And so that people could say, they can be compelled, but they could say, our family is probably not the right fit. And so it did a great job of drawing people in, and then also kind of self-selection. And so that was the beginning of how that started. And then since then, we've grown to multiple states, and we've done thousands of kids' videos. And so, in fact, I think the most recent stats are we've filmed 4,258 kids, and we have never turned a kid down. So how kids are selected is the states decide. They say, would you advocate for this youth? And not only do we do their videos, and we do it so that they have a ton of fun, they have a great experience. We commit to a 2-year kind of recruitment journey with the child, though most of the kids get, if they get matched far sooner than that, but we commit to 2 years. And so we've had 2,081 of those kids matched with families. So right at half of those kids that we've filmed. And then we've had over 17,000 families inquire about those kids. So a lot of families, they might see a kid, inquire about a child. Maybe they get selected to be that child's matched family. Many times they may not get matched with that family, but it gets them going down that road, and they end up becoming an adoptive family to another child that maybe we never even videoed, or they become a foster parent. So it's not just that a couple thousand kids have been matched, it's way more multiplied the number of adults to get engaged and find their path and adopt another child or foster or do something else. So it's been a profoundly effective program, more than the direct statistics even tell.
It's awesome.
And so as you mentioned, and we had staff conference call, and some of our staff around the country were just sharing stories of kids that they had videoed, and we were all just like, gosh, I didn't know that story, man. More people need to know about that. So that's where this podcast is going, to share some of those stories.
Okay, with that, let's go ahead and play the video from Dana in Kentucky.
My name is Dana Gleason, and I'm the state manager for Kentucky Kids Belong. And we got started back in 2019 with one of our signature projects called the I Belong Project. And so we've been filming kids who are in need of adoption, and we let these kids share who they are, what they enjoy, and what they hope for in a family. And one really neat experience that we just had at the end of 2025 was we had filmed a couple really great boys, and we were able to share about them on social media. So basically people can go on social media, and we would have the links to where these videos are stored, and then they could go check out the videos and hear straight from the kiddos again about what they are hoping for in a family and kind of what they enjoy and what they are longing for. And then from that, within a 2-week time span, there were over 90 inquiries for these two particular boys. And in that mix, there were 30 families that I was able to start conversations with that had never been certified to be able to foster or adopt. This was brand new to them. They had never, a lot of them even realized this problem was going on around them. And so they're now in the process, some of them, of starting that so they could become foster and adoptive families. Meanwhile, out of the 90 inquiries that came in, we know not each and every one of them will be a match for these kids, but there was one match for each of them that has taken place. And so these kids are now with families that are seeking their adoption. So their lives are changing because of the power of being able to capture them on film and let them share who they are.
All right. So that video was from our I Belong project manager, Dana in Kentucky. She's amazing. And also, deeply involved in this world personally. She really shares the impact of social media and how it really activates people, and it does more than just draw awareness. It really compels people. And so tell me, based upon what you guys just heard there, what caught your attention?
I love how she shared, these two boys in a 2-week time period having 90 inquiries. But the thing that was interesting to me is she said 40 of those inquiries were people who had never considered fostering before.
Right.
So just the value of, people seeing these videos that are like, wow, I didn't know this was a need. I didn't know this was something I could do. I've never considered foster care. I've never thought about it. And so of those 90, obviously they're not all going to adopt the same kiddo, but just what it leads to, and it leads to movement and activation and people witnessing that there is a need and maybe getting involved.
That was really, that illustrates really specifically and profoundly what I was saying earlier about, we might think, the effectiveness of the I Belong project is kids, an individual or sibling group and one family, and there's a match. But this, got, 90 families engaged, 40 for the kind of the first time. And so this was our conviction early on when we were doing photos, when we were challenged to help kids find families. Our conviction was that the best advocates and recruiters for the kids were not government employees, weren't preachers, weren't politicians. It was the kids themselves. And we just needed grown-ups who would give them a chance to share their own stories. And of course, you can see right there that these kids are the ones who get people's attention, turn heads and hearts towards them. And to have 40 families say, gosh, for the first time, I'm really interested in something that is profoundly meaningful and profoundly challenging. And so it's huge what these kids and what social media can do through their stories.
Definitely. Yeah, and just by way of context, I was thinking too, to kind of frame the overall picture, is that if around 400,000 kids are roughly in the U.S. foster care system, and 1 in 4, so about 100,000 of those kids are generally sort of what they call legally free or adoption eligible. I was just doing a little bit of digging on what is it, kind of the profile of a kid in care, and it sounds like on average kids wait 3+ years, and these are those who are adoptive eligible, wait 3+ years in care. And so I think the game changer before being adopted of the IBP, I Belong project, is that within is often a year, right? That almost 50% are adopted. So like that's often like in a year. I mean, it's making progress quickly too.
Yeah, they get matched within months usually. Well, here's the other thing that people may not know is I mentioned that the state selects the kids. Well, the kids that they give us are the longest waiting kids. And so they're like, hey, it will kind of run out of options. And so we're their last best chance for a family so that they don't languish longer in the system to eventually age out and probably age into something that is another wound. So yeah, it really I've seen lots of stories of where kids have said they've been in the system 5 years. They haven't had even an inquiry in the past 2 years. And then we do a video and they get dozens within weeks.
And the even cooler, or maybe equally cool, amazing thing about this is that, you think of 90 inquiries about these 2 boys. That means that there's that many inquiries the team gets to choose between, and they know these boys. And to think about who would be the best family for this kid. And now we're choosing a family for a kid and not a kid for a family. To be able to have multiple people and families to choose from, I mean, that's a beautiful thing.
I love that. I'm glad you brought that out because it gives them the best chance for permanency and thriving. Hopefully a phrase that, a friend of mine says is help the child keep the most and lose the least so that they can keep siblings together or they possibly can stay in their same school district, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. That's good. So the next one is Courtney. Who do we have coming up next?
We've got Rebecca from Georgia, and she's going to actually share 2 stories, but we're first going to hear a story of a little girl named Heaven.
Hi, I'm Rebecca with Georgia Kids Belong, and one of my other favorite stories from the I Belong project here in Georgia involved a little girl named Heaven. Heaven, at the time of her video shoot, was 11 years old. She came to a shoot at the Delta Flight Museum in Atlanta and had herself a day. She had a great time. She walked in with a big smile, was open to everything. She made necklaces, painted airplanes, toured airplanes, just had a wonderful time, made a little Lego airplane, and sat for an interview and did an absolutely beautiful job. She was bright and bubbly and friendly and just shared that she was longing for a family. And after her video was created, it was a beautiful one because of how bubbly and incredible she was on that video. We started to share it and on social media. And thankfully, we have a lot of advocates who share those videos to help kids find families, and they're often seen across the country. Little Heaven's video was shared, and about 2 weeks later, we received an email from a biological uncle of hers saying that they had been looking for her. His sister had been struggling. She was in a difficult place, had a few children, unfortunately, that she'd lost to child welfare, and they weren't sure where. So they had been looking for them for years, and he came across Heaven's video and reached out and said, we want her, we love her, we want her to be part of our family. What do we do? And so we got in touch with our child welfare partners and started that conversation. And in the meantime, I think 5 more relatives reached out, a grandmother, grandfather, multiple siblings, just saying, we want her in our lives. And it was a really, really beautiful thing. They were just blown away to have found her through a video. Well, little Heaven is now with that family, and her outcome was a positive one, an unexpected one, but definitely a happy ending for Heaven.
All right. I mean, that was a unique one. I mean, that's not something that happens every time for sure. But tell me, you guys, what stood out to you there in that video?
It's unbelievable, really. I mean, I didn't know that story until we had the staff meeting. And so knowing that a biological family found her through seeing this IPP video, I mean,
what are the odds?
It's like worth what we do right there, Yeah, what are the odds?
Yeah. Yeah, we always said that, there's a family for every child. And it's amazing that sometimes, that it's, there was a, how do you want to put a blood connection in that one. And so it also, that desire that we have to give the child the best possible match. And it's not always the case that a biological family is the best match. In fact, I've known some real tragic stories of that the children have gone to biological families and it's ended badly.
Yeah.
So, but they're also the opposite. relatives that just they just needed to know.
Yeah.
This is heavens. Heavens is a beautiful story of it going well.
Yeah, it's amazing.
All right, let's see what's next.
Okay, now we shift up to South Dakota and our RBP manager, Renee.
Hi, I'm Renee Kanowski, the IBP manager in South Dakota, and I have a couple stories from our IBP program from 2025. So we had one youth who was filmed in early 2024. She had some communication barriers and developmental delays. This particular youth was what some may consider hard to place. During her time in our IBP program, she received a total of 7 inquiries, and one of those inquiries ended up being a match. And after 417 days from filming, she was matched, just meaning a potential family was identified for her. After 518 days, she was finally placed, and she is currently living with her placement, and it is going well, and adoption will hopefully be finalized this spring.
So what does it stir in you when you hear that this young girl waited 518 days after filming before finally being placed?
I guess that's
Much longer than our average, but yeah. I mean, almost 2 years.
The value of those kiddos, like you said, that the state chooses. These are the kids that we've tried, and some people don't understand what that means. You know, I just led a informational session of people that are interested in foster care and adoption, and people were like, "What do you mean? There's kids that are waiting to be adopted in foster care?" Like a lot of people just don't even understand that, right? So now what that means is when a kid is in foster care, right, they're going to first try to reunify the kids. If that doesn't happen, they're going to look for family members. If that doesn't happen, they're usually going to first ask the foster family who is currently fostering the child to say, "Hey, are you open to adoption?" If they say no, they're going to look to the families within their agency that they know, and it's going to keep getting this like wider net, so to say. So these kids that we were filming are those kids, like you said, Brian, that have been waiting, that they don't have reunification is not happening. They have not found a biological family. The current foster family is not an option. The foster families, they know what are options. And so now it's like, okay, this kid still deserves a family. And how can we find that family? And that's when this happens. And when you say hard to place, I would venture to say almost all, if not all of the kids that we are filming are the hard to place kids. They are kids who have been waiting for a long time, are kids who are older, are kids who might have a special need or multiple siblings that they're trying to adopt together. So just the value again of the videos and what that did for this child. It's worth it. These kids are worth it.
Travis, what struck you on that?
Yeah. I think a lot of times as I think we talk about languishing care, and my mind often goes to just like, I've said this a lot in other episodes, but just what would it be like to be part of a story where the outcome's always sort of just floating around? You just don't know what's going to happen. You know, am I ever going to, at some point when you realize you're not going home, but then from there, it's like, am I going to be adopted? What would that family be like? What if it's scary? What if, they're worse? So like what a kid is facing. And then on top of that, being in school, maybe you're a teen or whatever, dealing with just the normal peer pressure and normal, like just the craziness of that is. And then on top of that, disconnected from really not only just your family and that identity, but what does my future mean? And I think that hovering uncertainty is just, it's horrifying in a way, just to picture what that would be like. So to have closure and conclusion to these stories of kids getting belonging through family, just unbelievable.
Yeah, conclusion. That's a good word. Courtney, you used the phrase, and maybe some people have not heard it before, others have, but it's hard to place. And I want to make sure that people don't see that as a disparagement on the child themselves, because it sounds like, oh, they're hard to place because they're the problem. I think it's a disparagement on us that we're like, oh, we consider some kids, not worthy enough to have a family. And so it's, if anything, their kids hard to place because there are adults with hearts that aren't big enough. And so,
or the lack of knowing, right? I think, again, I think people just don't even know that this is out there sometimes. And so a kiddo who's languishing in a system that people don't know about can lead to being hard to place, even though they're wonderful children who are, we've adopted 3 that you would consider hard to place. And their story has been belonging and adding so much value and joy to our family that I can imagine without.
Yeah. The other thing this specific story shows, and it happens a lot, is when people think about what this program is, the I Belong Project, all they really see is the finished video. And like, here's the 2.5 minutes, and, that's what these guys do. And it's like, well, that's the most public facing thing that we do. This is part of a 2-year commitment. And we have had kids adopted who, in fact, one of our staff has adopted a girl who did 3 different videos over the years.
Wow.
And so we have a multi-year commitment when we video kid to help them find a family. And so it's not just one and done. We did the video, put it in the can, good luck, cross our fingers. It's just the beginning of a multi-year commitment with multiple organizations advocating for those kids. Okay. Yeah. Let's move on to, are we back in Kentucky with this story?
Back in Kentucky. And this is fun because you kind of did a great intro into, multiple people also involved. So, not only a long time period that we're, as AKB, we're involved, but it's also many other people that get to be involved. So let's hear what Ellen has to say about that.
Hi there, I'm Ellen, and I get to work with the I Belong Project here in Kentucky, and just so excited to get to share today just a little story about some of how IBP or I Belong Project is impacting people here in Kentucky while we're always celebrating the kids that we serve through the I Belong Project. One of the other just neat pieces of what we do is getting to work with an incredible team of volunteers, buddy volunteers, hairdressers, creative professionals, videographers, photographers, just all of the people that come together to make the I Belong Project possible. And while just over and over, I hear the stories of the impact that being a part of this work makes on those individuals. Just wanted to share one small example of that. Back in the summer, we had a new photographer working with us. She's young, in her 20s, just kind of launching into her career and professional work as a photographer. And she had spent the bulk of the summer doing lots of wedding photography, which is fun, but comes with a whole lot of pressure. And she was just sharing with me at the end of our I Belong Project day what a refreshing and wonderful experience she had had. She said, I love getting to celebrate weddings with people, but she said, everybody has their shot list and there's so much pressure and there's so many expectations and it's very busy. And just at the end of the day, you're exhausted in a very exhausted way. And she was sharing how incredible it was to use her creative gifts and her talents to do something so deeply meaningful. She had never been in the space of, foster care, adoption, anything like that. This was new, kind of a new space for her. And just to see her light up and say, I'm exhausted at the end of the day, but just also so encouraged and so empowered. And I just got to connect with these kids and use my creative gifts in a way that would connect and bless them. And, that the Lord might use her work to connect a kid to an adoptive family was just blew her away and so deeply encouraged her. And just time and again, she's been back with us to volunteer and just continues to share and recruit other people to be a part of this work. And just also sharing within the media world how, that can make such an impact for these kids. Media professionals being willing to exercise their gifts in this space just makes all the difference. And so just wanted to share that little story about how, getting a variety of people involved in the I Belong Project is both necessary and just continues to expand our work.
All right. So that was a great example, Courtney, you said, of multiple people. And this shows what happens when creative people step into the foster care space. I mean, they often leave changed too. So you guys react to what Ellen shared.
I love, Travis, have you got to be at an IBP shoot before?
I was going to ask at the outset. I mean, I'm sure both you guys have. I've not. So
yeah,
really
never. All the grant writing for this and never put me on a plane
right? Okay.
I think that this is one of my favorite parts about an IBP shoot is working in this space, I'm familiar. I know the need still touches me every single time I've been to a shoot. But seeing people who have not witnessed that before and who don't understand foster care or don't understand the need, and then seeing them show up to a shoot, videographers, photographers, sometimes it's like people who are doing hair or people who are just willing to take them from place to place, whatever that might look like, to see their reaction to this is so inspiring. And again, getting more people to understand the need is something other people wouldn't even recognize or know that this happens behind the scenes, right? Like this volunteer photographer story.
Mm-hmm.
One time I was talking to it was a volunteer in Kansas that worked on an I Belong project shoot. And she has this crazy story of where she was interviewing what at that time was a teenager who then later becomes her daughter years later, realizes she was the one interviewing her. And it's just unbelievable, just that another kind of wild story about it.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. We've had
and not only that, the
many of the creative
to give back, the photographer to say, hey, I'm willing to give of my time and my passions and my business to do this. But then, like you said, we've seen I've heard many stories across our states of people who have then gone on to foster or have gone on to become adoptive parents. Sometimes, like you said, of even the kids that they're working with that day. It's pretty incredible.
All right. So now on to our next one. And this story is, I think, to me, was especially powerful.
We are on with Rebecca again in Georgia, of a couple of brothers.
One of my favorite I Belong project stories from here in Georgia involves sibling boys who we filmed several years ago at the College Football Hall of Fame here in Atlanta. Prior to our video shoot, we received a message from the boys' case manager who shared that the boys were in separate foster homes and were slated to be advocated for adoption separately. Sadly, here in Georgia, there simply aren't enough foster homes willing to adopt sibling groups. So it is not the desire of the state to have any sibling be placed in separate foster homes or certainly adopted separately. But that, unfortunately, is often the case. But this case manager wanted to fight for these boys. And so she asked her director with child welfare if she could have a few months and sign the boys up for an I Belong project video shoot. She argued that, in the very least, that the boys would have a video made together and they get to spend a wonderful day together at the College Football Hall of Fame. She also had a gut feeling that once even her director saw the boys on film together, that they might be willing to give her more time to advocate for them to be adopted together. She assumed that they would become more than a file. They would be a video of three brothers interacting, and that most likely we'd get to see their sweetness. And that is exactly what happened. Since the boys are in separate homes, they all arrived separately. The oldest brother, Rod, arrived first, all dressed up, very excited. He loves football, and so was excited to be there that day. He was there a good bit before his brothers arrived. And so we immediately wanted to engage him, wanted him to have fun. So the person who was assigned to be his buddy started inviting him to just participate in all sorts of games and crafts that we had available for them to do that day, ask if he wanted to start touring the museum. And he was absolutely adamant that he did not want to do a single thing, eat a single thing, experience a single thing until his brothers got there. And so that's what he did. He waited for them. And when they got there, the whole room was in tears because they ran together and just big hugs, lots and lots of excitement. It had been a good bit since they had seen each other. And they spent that day together, absolutely having a blast, not leaving each other's side. And during their video, prior to the video, the boys had been given footballs. And so they went into their interview all carrying footballs in their arms. And during their interview, you can see Rod, the older brother, holding his football a certain way. And then you see both younger brothers look up to him quietly change how they were holding their footballs. They were looking up to what he was doing and trying to imitate that, which was incredibly sweet to catch on video. Also, every single question that they answered was about each other. It was about football or it was about each other. They were asked questions like, what would your ideal day be like? And all three of them answered that they would spend the day together and do all kinds of things. When the older brother, Rod, was asked what he hoped to do in the future, what his hopes were, he immediately said, I hope to be an example for my brothers, and I hope to keep us together because family is everything. Looked right in the camera and just said, I want to be with them and I want to take care of them. It's my responsibility. So as you can imagine, an absolutely beautiful video was made of those boys that day. They had a great day together, but they made a beautiful video. After that video was complete and sent to their case manager, the case manager sent it to her director, who had been the decision maker in having them adopted separately. And she just said, I want you to see them. I want you to see how they interact, that they're brothers and they're meant to be together. And we should be fighting for them to be adopted together for as long as we can. And that director gave her 6 months to use the video to advocate for a family together. And I'm happy to report that those boys have since been adopted together.
All right. So this one is powerful. Power of brotherly love. And I mean, and not only, gosh, how I want to put this. You've got people who this is their job. They're professionals. Mm-hmm. They've seen this a lot. And they might get, I don't want to say the word jaded or, but they operate, they've seen so much that they operate very technically. I don't know how to say it, but then to show how the video changed a decision maker's mind is super powerful.
Yeah, it really is pretty cool. And, thinking about kids and brothers and sisters being split, and people ask, why is that? Should they ever be split? And I'm willing to bet the reason these kids were split was because there were multiple kids and they thought, well, we don't have somebody who can foster all of them, or there's no way we're going to find somebody that'd be willing to adopt all of them together. And so we need to split these kids to find them permanency. And then to find out that that's not always true. And it's beautiful when they can be adopted together and stay together. So seeing the power of their relationship, like you said, Brian, like for somebody to be watching that thought, hey, we better try adopting them separately. And then to recognize like, that's not best for these kids.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's probably people are surprised to know that siblings do get separated, but there is a rationale to it that it's like, well, better that they get adopted separately than none of them get adopted together. But again, we really work towards keeping siblings together. And the best way to do that is to show them being together.
Yeah. Yeah. And by way, again, of sort of some context, it looks like in the adoption realm of this, that 20 to 35% of kids who go on to be adopted do become split. And if it's a sibling group of 4 or more, you're looking at 50%, which is understandable just with capacity and then, maybe special needs within that group. But when you can keep and preserve a family within a family intact, like that's amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, that there's that moment. I don't even think it got onto the video itself. And that's again, kind of the behind the scenes thing that Rebecca shared was the story about the older brother holding the football a specific way and the 2 younger ones seeing him and then changing how they held the ball. It just shows the power of keeping siblings together and how they can be supportive to each other and help. They can help each other through the adoption process.
That's a great point. And I know we've talked to other families that have, kind of adopted sibling groups and seen that at work where sort of this family that joins into this family, there's a dynamic there that often they'll see like one of the kids or more where they're able to sort of relate and kind of cushion the blow to some degree, but also sort of be a liaison a little bit to the parents of like, hey, this is what Jimmy kind of does or whatever. And so like you kind of see that kind of cool dynamic too at play.
Yeah, I love that story. And I love it when siblings can stay together.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and then the last video that we're going to share is going back to Renee in South Dakota and sharing a sweet adoption story.
So another story that I wanted to share is our IBP program in South Dakota had 26 finalized adoptions in 2025. For National Adoption Month, we reached out to one of the adoptive families who inquired through the I Belong project and asked them to share part of their story. So I'm just going to share some of what they shared with us. Our path to our children was anything but traditional. After several losses, pregnancies that ended too soon, and hopeful adoption situations that fell through, We were heartbroken. Little did we know that at the very same time, a little boy and girl were also heartbroken, waiting for a family of their own. A social worker who knew our story shared a photo of these two children. We were immediately smitten by their smiling faces. The road ahead was paved with tears on both sides. Their grief from loss of biological family, abuse, and neglect. Our grief from miscarriages and too many goodbyes and fostering. But God was at work in the middle of the pain, knitting together a family that both we and the kids had been longing for. Adopting has changed everything, our rhythms, routines, and even the way we understand love. Before, I thought love was mostly a warm, fuzzy feeling. But loving through adoption is more than feelings. It's a choice, even in hard seasons. It means celebrating the joy of family while also honoring the hard parts of our children's stories. Adoption has deepened my understanding of grace, unconditional love, and sacrifice like nothing else ever has.
All right. So this one shows that it's the adoption. It can be challenging and can be a grace-filled way of learning to love. And so tell me, you guys, what struck you on this story?
There's obviously beauty in adoption, right? But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the grief that comes, that is inevitable. And oftentimes, like she mentioned, in multiple people within the story, it's not just the kid, it's the biological family that's going to be grieving through this. Sometimes it's oftentimes it's a foster family who had those kids in their home, who are grieving the loss of that child and maybe their kids or their extended family or people in their circle. But then also within families, sometimes people are choosing adoption because they've dealt with infertility or they've dealt with loss. And so there is a lot of grief around it. And again, we have some webinars around this. We talk a lot on our podcast to different people who speak into this and have stories about it. But again, I just think we'd be remiss if we don't highlight the fact that adoption is a beautiful thing, but it also comes with loss and grief and hardship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's right. And I was thinking, it's born out of brokenness. The very need for adoption was that there was a severing of a family. Mm-hmm. That's extremely sobering, and it is something to lament, while also knowing that the redemption that happens through a new family formed and the healing and all that is amazing. Kind of, I think of from a previous guest that talked about the time orientation, which still is a powerful thought to me of where, for many adoptive kids, they're always looking back, the rear view mirror, what was behind them. Well, often the adoptive parents are looking forward in the windshield, what's ahead, and being excited. And so sort of you see that difference in time orientation. Mm-hmm. What I loved in this story was where also because of the parents' own grief of loss and miscarriages, there was maybe more of a sense in their own story of loss that then when they could maybe even have more compassion and understanding around the kids' loss as well.
That's good. Yeah, I want to just say to our listeners that I think that a lot of people, most people maybe, deal with grief by trying to avoid it. And I just want to welcome you to the real world, and reality therapy is you're going to experience grief in this life. And the best way to deal with it is to face it and to go through it, but don't go through it alone, and be prepared. In this life, you will have trouble and you'll have grief. And so it's a human experience. But what's unique here in the adoption world is you're choosing it. And I would say that is obviously a hard thing and a brave thing, but also by choosing it, you're helping a child not have to go through it alone. You're helping them heal. But to do it, you have to enter into it as well. And I want to thank those of you who have even considered doing this kind of thing for having hearts that are big enough to say you're willing to have them be broken so that you could help another child heal. And that was something that my wife, when we were foster parents, always, all our stories ended towards some sort of reunification or an adoption to another family. And we always experienced the loss of a child that we loved. The lesson that we told and learned and told ourselves and learned ourselves was as the adults, we have chosen and know how to let our hearts break and then let our hearts heal, and that it's worth it, so that you can help a child know that they're not alone and know that someone loves them.
Well said.
Well, I thank you guys for sharing these stories and how they impacted you. And I want to thank our staff who does this work. And it's not just the people that you heard. And there's so many people behind the scenes that make this go well. I want to thank the people who do inquire on these kids, no matter whether it led to a specific a match to a specific child or it led you on a different journey. I am just grateful for people who are willing to let a child's story, hear their history, hear their hurts, hear their hopes, and let that impact them. Let that turn their heads and hearts towards the child, and that they step into that. So I want to encourage our listeners to let these kids impact your lives, and then you take the next right step for you.
Yeah. And I do encourage our listeners, if this is new to you, if you're like, IBP, I've never heard of this, I don't know about heart galleries, that go to our website, and on the top of our website, americaskidsbelong.org, there's a button that says adopt. And it walks you through what foster care or adoption through foster care looks like. And then we also have a link to our IBP and kiddos, like I said, who have been waiting for a family to say yes to these kids who deserve it.
Yeah. And just to add on to what you said, Brian, as well as that, and you kind of said this, but like that kid that you may see, that you fall in love with, that you see is fitting into your family and the imagination goes wild, that may just be the catalyst to your journey that becomes another kid. Because likely with so many inquiries, that may not be the kid that you end up being able to adopt, but that kid is who caught your attention and turned your head.
Yeah.
And let your heart follow that.
Yep. All right. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Have a good day.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, will you help us reach more people by subscribing, sharing the podcast with a friend, and leaving a 5-star review? If you've been inspired by what you've heard today and want to learn more of how you can make a difference for kids in foster care and the foster families where you live, visit americaskidsbelong.org. We depend on individual donors to fund our work. We'd be grateful if you would consider joining us as a monthly donor. Visit americaskidsbelong.org to make your tax-deductible donation. Thank you. Together, we can ensure a family for every child in foster care and a foster-friendly community to ensure every foster family feels loved and supported.